righty. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Last time around, we didn't have a title for the podcast, so it was kind of like the pilot. I think we just called it the Great Southern Brainfart Interview Podcast. But this time around, we have a title. Drum roll, please. It's Blowin' Wind with the Great Southern Brainfart. Pretty clever in there, right? Well, so this is episode 2, and this time around, my guest is bassist extraordinaire Mike LePond. Mike is best known for his role as the Major Rager on the 4-string motherfucker in progressive metal heavyweights Symphony X. Mike's a busy dude, so when he isn't melting faces on the road with Symphony X, he can be found deep-rooted in some sort of musical project, regardless of size, whether it be some small unknown band from some small town to, working with the biggest of them. So in this episode, I was really curious to speak with Mike about all that. So we talked about Symphony X. We talked about his latest release from his own band, Silent Assassins. And we talked about the mysterious King Diamond / Merciful Fate themed project called Them. Mike was a really cool guy. I had a great time talking with him, and I hope you will enjoy this episode as well. So without further ado, let's blow some wind. Well, Mike, thanks for being on the show, though. I really do appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, so you are a busy guy, even when it doesn't seem like you're a busy guy.
Accurate.
It's so funny because I was thinking to myself the other day, I was like, gosh, I'm due for a Symphony X tour. I was like, and then all of a sudden I see your name popping up doing this project and your name popping up doing that project. And I'm like, well, at least Mike's staying busy. He's keeping his chops up.
Yeah. Well, yes. Last year, Symphony X didn't do anything.
Right.
So, Michael Romeo was doing he was recording a solo album, which he's finishing up now. So it wasn't, and, Russell was out on the road with the Adrenaline Mob and Trans-Siberian Orchestra. So, nothing was going on, but I kept very busy last year anyway. Mm-hmm. I toured Europe a lot with Ross the Boss from Man of War. And I was, in the process of recording this new solo album that came out today. But Symphony X, I'm always in contact with Michael Romeo, and we're going to get together probably next month and start working on some stuff.
Well, that's fantastic because, one of the things I love about, especially someone like yourself, when I read about this, is that there never seems to be somebody you don't seem to be somebody who just is like, okay, I'm just going to hang out until Symphony X is ready. You've obviously got that in your blood, that you need to keep active. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about was because it was made public a while ago that you had developed Crohn's. And I am actually good friends with one of my best friends actually has Crohn's, and I know what she goes through, and she suffers from it pretty badly. How hard was that for you to be on the road and be a musician? I mean, I can't even begin to imagine.
Oh my God, man. I've had some horror stories. It's I've had Crohn's for about 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I've had surgery 3 times from it. It's as you know from your friend, it's a crushing disease, and it just knocks you out.
Oh. I see the effect that it has on her. There'll be months where she's like, I'm great, and then all of a sudden she'll just be like, I feel like I'm dying, and it really is.
It's rough because you're supposed to have a certain diet, which on the road you're not going to really, you're lucky if you find what you're supposed to eat on the road because it's just you get what you get. Mm-hmm. And there's been so many times where I've been on tour somewhere in the world and I've been just laying in bed with in really, really bad pain, and then just having to just 5 minutes before we go on, forcing myself to just get up, get dressed, get on the stage, and put on a show while I'm in such pain. And this happened many, many times. And the only thing that gets me past it is, you know, that old adage that the show must go on.
Right.
And, you know, I just have this thing where, you know, I can't let the guys down. And so, I mean, in my whole career with Symphony X, I've been with the band for 18 years. There's only been one time where we had to cancel a festival because I went into the hospital and all that stuff, and we had to cancel. But that was the only one time. But yeah, it's a really, really tough disease, and you know, I can really understand how your friend feels.
But I also look at it, though, and I look at it as a very inspiring thing, because I also see this, you know, side of my friend who, you know, she goes about her life every day. She still goes to work every day. She still goes and hangs out with us when she can, you know. And so, like, I look at you and I think to myself, like, what a role model for somebody who, or people in general who are suffering from that disease, because, you know, what you do on a nightly basis is, people don't understand how demanding being a musician is, you know what I mean? Because it's not like, I mean, there's a lot more to it than, woohoo, I get to play music for 2 hours. It's like the travel and everything that goes along with it, you know?
Yeah, and all that stuff, you know, that's tough for that disease too. You know, the travel, the very little sleep, it's all very stressful. And
stress is the big factor also, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So all those things together, you know, it's really, really tough. So, yeah, it's been rough. But, you know, just like your friend, she forces herself to do it. You know, I'm very impressed by that, because that's, you know, it's not an easy disease. But, you know, good for her. And, you know, I've been managing it. You know, it's been like 20 years now that, you know, I've just been living with it, and you just have to find a way to get past it, no matter what.
Oh yeah, yeah, and like I said, the fact that you keep as busy as you do is super impressive to me. And obviously, the big thing right now that you've got going on is the Silent Assassins project. How is that for you? Like from a musical standpoint, to go from, you know, the Symphony X type setting, or from like the quote unquote kind of hired gun setting when you do other projects with other people, to all of a sudden kind of like leading your own project?
Yeah, you know, each of these things has its own rewards. You know, I mean, being in Symphony X, we're known as one of the biggest bands in the progressive metal genre. So, you know, I'm very blessed to play with those guys, and every album, you know, it just makes me a better player. But also, when I'm a hired gun for all these other projects, I think it's great for my playing to meet different musicians and hear their style of writing songs and how they approach songs, and it's a challenge. And I do so many projects. I mean, probably most of the projects I've done, you probably have never even heard of, because I've done so many. I do like one a month.
I was just going to say that, because I mean, you've done. I mean, I've seen your name on everything from, like, you know, working with like Jordan Rudess to working with like, who the hell is that? Do you know what I mean? like some local band in, like, you know, Newark, you know, or whatever. You know?
Yeah, so that's the truth. And so, yeah, I mean, even all these different bands, they have all their own approaches, and it's challenging, and it definitely makes me a better player. And doing my own stuff, it's just incredibly rewarding, you know? I mean, 'cause I've always been into classic heavy metal, you know, since I was younger. It's like really number one in my heart, and I always wanted to put out, you know, an album in that kind of genre.
Right.
And, you know, and then I was finally able to do it after all this time. So, you know, that's more of just, I feel like it's, you know, definitely a bucket list thing that I was able to do. And, you know, it's really exciting to get everyone's reactions of these songs that, you know, you sit in your room and you just write these ideas, and then all of a sudden people are listening to it.
That's a really heavy thing as a musician in general, because I'm a musician myself too, and but of course not nowhere near that level though. But I get that, where like, you know, you kind of have this thing where you're like, you know, I create. It's almost like you wish other people could see where you were at when you were creating. Is you're like I was sitting on the couch in my pajamas, you know, like with a notebook and an acoustic guitar writing them, and now I'm on stage playing them for you, you know. And it's like this kind of a heavy feeling that it's gone from such a personal stage to such a, you know, public stage, you know.
That is so true, because it's like, you know, you might one day just like you described. I mean, that's happened so much where just, you know, you're in your pajamas or something. You're on your bed just playing a guitar with no amplifier, and just something sounds good, and it's just a really it's an amazing thing to see the final product like 2 years later.
Right.
You know, and it's incredibly rewarding. And, you know, I was lucky enough to do it twice this time, you know, 2 solo albums. So, you know, I'm happy about it.
Well, so with Silent Assassins, is this something that you would like to actually see yourself hit the road with at some point? Or is this pretty much just going to be kind of a studio-based project type thing where it's just an outlet for you to get your music out?
Well, I mean, my goal is to kind of have it working hand in hand with Symphony X. So like when Symphony X is off the road, then I could jump on the road with the Silent Assassins. You know, when I released the first solo album, I didn't really have a lot of time to work on a tour and all that, because right away after I did that album, I jumped into the Symphony X Underworld album sessions,
right.
and then we went on the road, and then before I knew it, it was 2 years after the release, and you know, so but you know, this time I definitely want to get out there, and I'm real excited because the first album was a self-titled, was, you know, a self-release except for Europe. But this time around, I have Frontiers, who's really pushing it hard, and I really want to get out there and play.
Frontiers has been an incredible label, though, for artists like yourself. I mean, like, so diverse. I feel like over the years, they have just, I mean, it was so funny because, I mean, I'm one of these guys that grew up, you know, I grew up in the, 70s and 80s, and I'm 44, so I grew up in listening to a lot of 80s metal and, like, you know, stuff like that. So it is so, like, fucking cool to me to, like, at one point see, like, Frontiers is signed to Tora, and then all of a sudden turn around and see, like, Frontiers is putting out Silent Assassins, and I'm like, Jesus, man, this is, like, the new, like, go-to label for, like, just releasing just music. So, like, with that, like, was it easy for you to work with them when it came to you kind of, like, putting out your vision as far as the album goes?
Yeah, they were just really cool about anything I wanted to do. They're always very professional. And yeah, like you say, you know, I love how they put out a lot of these older bands that are still going, and, you know, they have a home there and they're still making great music. So to be on Frontiers actually was like the best I could have hoped for, you know. So I'm looking forward to it, and they've been really, really cool to me, and you know, we're going to see where it goes.
So speaking of projects and of all the mini projects that you've done, one of the more fascinating projects that I feel like you were a part of over the past few years that I feel like a lot of people, it felt like it was going on the radar and then it fell off the radar real quick was a project called Them, where it was kind of like a King Diamond inspired Merciful Fate-ish kind of thing. Whatever happened with that project? Because the bit that I heard from them I thought was fantastic, you know?
Yes. You know, the singer's name is Troy, and he lives in New York. So he had contacted me about this project he had because, you know, he used to be in a King Diamond Merciful Fate tribute.
Okay.
And then he came to me and he was like, you know, I want to do some original music, you know, in the same kind of style. And I was like, okay, yeah. And then he sent me the music and I was blown away by it. I said, wow, this is really incredible. Who's in your band? And you know,
I want in.
Yeah. And then he told me all these guys, you know, he's got guys from Germany, and I'm like, wow, okay. So I went and recorded his album, and they did some touring last year. You know, unfortunately I wasn't able to tour with them because I was out with Ross the Boss so much.
Right.
But they did tour, and I actually do have some news on them. Troy contacted me again, and I'm going to be playing bass on the next Them album. I got to record it next month.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
So they are coming back with another album, and, you know, the songs are the same style, sounds super killer. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I would love to play some shows with them this time. You know, last year I didn't have the time, but, you know, I definitely would be really stoked.
I thought what was so interesting about Them was that the little bit that I heard from them, I just remember being so blown away. And then a lot of people were just like, or not a lot, but some people I would hear be like, oh my God, they're just like cloning King Diamond and Merciful. I'm like, dude, I could think of like way worse bands to sound like. You know what I mean? I mean, like, you know, you got Rival Sons who people comparing to Zeppelin, and you've got, you know, bands like that, and then them, they're like, oh, they're just like ripping off King Diamond. I'm like, dude, if he can pull it off, more power to him. But I thought the songs themselves were fantastic, and I definitely wanted more. So I'm psyched to hear that there's going to be some more to come from them.
Yeah, he's got a whole another crazy concept going. He's he's got a great imagination, Troy, and so yeah, that's ready to go. And next month I'm going to record bass on it, so it's definitely gonna happen.
So of all the projects that you've worked on, you know, whether they be large scale or small, local, you know, smaller projects, is there one that stands out to you the most as being like, that was a really interesting and maybe even challenging one for me?
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely the Them project, you know, was fascinating to me. You know, it was the musicianship and the songwriting, you know, was really top notch. And I've done some interesting things. I actually last year I did something I never did before in my life. I played on a black metal album.
I'm trying to picture black metal Mike LePond in like corpse paint, you know, but it's just not working.
No, I'm all over the map, you know. So that was fascinating too. That was a lot of fun to do, and it just, there's so many different styles. I did another cool. I didn't, you know, I forget what's the name of the band. They're going to kill me now if I forget. But yeah, there's just so many, and you know, most of them have their own kind of charm, and you know, just, you know, I really haven't experienced any projects that were really awful, to be honest. I mean, they were all pretty cool, and you know, it's a shame because there's so much talent out there.
Right. Well, so like, how does one go about getting Michael LePond to appear on an album or a recording? Because, like I said, like I mean, when I was really looking at the list of some of the bands you played with, I would research them. I'd be like, wow, this is like some like unsigned band from some state, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, so like how does that work?
Yeah. Well, you know, I kind of pride myself on being like the anti-rock star guy. So honestly, I'm very, very accessible. I just have my own little Facebook page, and you know what? Whoever wants to write to me can write to me, and I'll always respond. And usually that's where you get really some great projects, you know, and these bands that maybe they don't have a lot of money, you know, but their stuff is so good. And, you know, in many of these cases, if I think something is really, really good and maybe the band, you know, don't have some money to pay me, I'll do it for free, you know, just because it's so good, and I would love to see it get out there a little bit. But, yeah, it's really easy to contact me.
See, that's so fascinating to me, because what I love what you touched on there was that it's about just the music for you, and like the artistry, and like whether or not it's worth your time and things like that, you know, because I feel like so many people, like one of the things I'm hoping is that, you know, somebody, maybe one of my listeners might be in a really great band and go, holy shit, you mean we could get Mike LePond to do this for like a 6-pack? Man, we're gonna call him up, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you know, I mean, exactly. I mean, there's so many great bands out there, and they just, you know, you can't, especially nowadays, it's so hard to just break out of that internet and get known. So, you know, I mean, I've been blessed, and where I kind of have a name out there, and if I can help somebody, I'm happy to do it.
So yeah, I mean, you've been on the scene for quite a while, and you've been a musician. I mean, you've been doing this a long time, and we're probably very close in generational sides as far as it comes to technology and things like that. From your perspective, the ability for bands now, I actually had somebody tell me one time, you know, the best thing in the world is that anybody can make a record now, and that the worst thing in the world is that anybody can make a record now. Like, do you kind of look at that the same way and think in some ways like that there's a level of oversaturation that keeps the truly great bands from rising to the top, or I mean, or what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think actually that is really true. There are so many bands, and they're all trapped in the internet. And if you're a young band right now, it's so hard to break out of there. You know, in the old, you know, in the 70s and the 80s, the record companies would sort through these bands, and they would find, you know, the amazing bands from, you know, the bands that still need work. And they would take the great bands and put them out there and get them out there. But now the record companies are all going out of business. The music industry is in bad shape. So now it's just, you know, the best band you've ever heard is fighting on the internet against a band maybe who just got together 3 weeks ago but has really good marketing. And
oh yeah.
And it's, you know, there's nothing to sort them out. You know, there's no record companies anymore that'll go in and find these great bands. So it's really hard these days, and it's really a shame.
It really is, because even from, you know, like I've been doing this blog since 2009, and one of the reasons I even started it in the first place was because I was discovering and finding all these great bands that no one was really talking about, you know, and I was like, why aren't these bands like rising up, you know, like through the other stuff, you know, that's kind of sitting up at the top, and and I've even heard things, from a PR standpoint where people were like, some websites or blogs or whatever, like won't even cover a band unless they have a certain amount of likes on Facebook or followers on Twitter. And that to me is kind of ridiculous. So coming from, you and me, the old schoolers, like how is that for you to look at that and go that is now considered a measure of quality?
Yeah, it's like you say, they're looking at likes. So maybe, this amazing band is really not good on social media, and then this other band, that is just beginners, are like these whiz kids on social media, and they're going to get more of the coverage. It doesn't. It's totally not fair, And I feel bad for a lot of these young bands that are starting out. I was lucky, with Symphony X, we kind of, before this craziness all happened, we were around and we kind of broke through it. But now, wow, it's really in bad shape. And even for bands, if you're not like huge like Metallica and you're just kind of in the middle, like say a band like Symphony X, even we're getting crushed.
Right.
We're getting crushed, of course, with CD sales because many people, they don't even care about CDs. They'll just listen to it somewhere else. They'll get it for free somehow, and or they just want to buy a single here and there, and that's not what we're about. We're about albums.
Right, and that's what I was going to ask you too. Was that because Symphony, when Symphony X hit the scene in like '94 or so, you were pretty much like right on the cusp. It was like right before the internet became prevalent, but yet you guys were still out long enough before social media. I mean, you guys were 3 albums deep before social media even kind of came through. So you guys were already established, though. But with this going on now, with this kind of thing, has it affected you guys at all, or have you guys do you feel like Symphony X is solidified in kind of where you're at, and it hasn't really no harm, no foul for you?
No, it's affected us badly. Our record sales have basically been cut in half, and that's crushing. When we put out Underworld, in sales, it was only half of what the album before did, and so it's crushing, and it's forcing all these bands to try to stay on the road and try to put out albums as fast as they can and stay on the road. So and so it's a rough situation. You wish you could just work on an album for a year and put out something really, really great and then go out. But a lot of these bands just don't have the time. They'll go broke unless they just stay on the road.
Oh yeah, I see that with so many of the younger up and coming touring bands, where they put out an album and they hit the road and they're doing 3 months on, 2 weeks off, 3 months on, 2 weeks off, where they're doing they do 7, 8, 9 shows in a row sometimes, and that's the only way they're making their living, because like you said, the album sales aren't there,
No, they're not. And Spotify, you get nothing from Spotify basically. You get just a percentage of a penny for a listen, so so you're getting crushed there too. So there's for a lot of we'll say the B and the C bands, we're all kind of struggling, just trying to hang on.
Right. And with that, does it make it trying to find the right way to say. Does it ever get to the point where you feel like discouraged, like should we keep going, or is it the fact that keep continuing to go forward for the fans that are there makes it worth it?
Yeah, I mean that's the question we've been wrestling with for a long time, because we see the sales cut in half, and it's very discouraging. I mean, especially a band that's been together for 20 years, and then you feel like, wow, I mean, should we even do this anymore? And but then again, you hear from fans and who have lived their life listening to your music, how your music has changed their life, and that makes you go on because you have such an appreciation for what you do, and there's nothing better in the world than that. So, so Symphony X is not going anywhere. So.
Oh, well, that makes me so happy because I have to say the 2 Symphony X shows I've ever seen in my life here in Atlanta were 2 of the best shows I've ever seen. So I'm like, please don't go anywhere, because I absolutely I walked away from the first time I saw you guys was when you guys were here. It was supposed to be I think Nevermore was supposed to be on the bill, and they ended up dropping off or something, and then but it was you guys in Power Glove, and which I thought was a hilarious mix, but it worked. Yeah, those guys they're interesting with those outfits. And the whole video game, like I've never seen people moshing to the Mario theme, which I thought was pretty, fascinating. But it was, but I'm glad to hear that you guys are sticking it out, though, definitely. And one of the things I always thought was super fascinating was I had a great interview with Russell Allen, a matter of fact, on that tour when you guys were here in Atlanta, and that was the first time I learned that he actually was a knight for Medieval Times. Like, do you guys ever just go to Medieval Times while you're on the road for free, and just hang out?
I mean, I would do it, but I just never got a chance to. There's a Medieval Times right here in New Jersey where I live that I go a lot. I'd love it there, but I think that since we've been on the road, we never really did that. But we could have, because he has the connections.
So I was about to say, you need to utilize this for like a free band meal and some entertainment.
That'd be great, man.
So with so many acts out there to work with, like, what would be your dream act to work with? Like what would be a dream for you to collaborate with that you haven't?
Well, when I think about that, I go back to my idols. I mean, it would be a dream to work with Richie Blackmore. That was, because he's one of my favorites, or Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath, or work with Rob Halford from Judas Priest, or all my heroes. But will that ever happen? I doubt it. But it would be great.
Well, now that it's out there, maybe the right ears will hear it.
Yeah.
So,
right, you never know.
And that's funny that you said that, because when you were talking about the greats like that, like the Black Sabbath and Blackmore and stuff, like you're one of the things we're starting to see is we're really starting to see our heroes kind of get up there in age, and like getting close to where it's pretty much time, I don't want to count the days, obviously, for some of my favorite bands, but like you look at bands like Priest and Maiden and Scorpions and whatnot, and like obviously they don't have another 20 years to them. Like what do you ever think to yourself, like envision what would happen to metal once those bands are gone? Yeah,
I think about this all the time, and you always hear somebody passes away from some band, and it makes me so sad, because you want your heroes to just never die, and you want them to be around forever, and you want those old albums you listened to in the 80s, you want them to be, just like it was yesterday. But unfortunately, that's not the way life works, and it is coming near that time. We're not far away when all our heroes are either going to be stopping or going to be passed away, unfortunately. And so I think for someone like me, I think the Silent Assassins is a good thing, because my vision was to play heavy metal music the way I remember it growing up. I want the listeners of today, the young kids, to feel like I did. When you grab an album from the store and you open it and you first put it on, and you get blown away by what you hear, and that's all we could do. Just keep it alive, and I'll always try to do that, and I'll always pay homage to my heroes.
See, and that's what I think is the best that any of these bands can do, is to keep the spirit alive and to keep the music. I just find it unfortunate, though, that there's a whole generation that'll never get to experience like what it was like to see metal bands on like a giant stage with a giant production, and I think I even said this like when I reviewed you guys on the last time you played Atlanta, was that it was like seeing an arena show crammed into a club. But like in my mind, like if I close my eyes and I'm hearing Paradise Lost, like I can picture ramps and stairs and the whole thing, but like it's really about the music and just having it out there, because it's almost kind of like an archaeological thing. Like, even if people don't know it's there, if they dig, they'll find it, and it'll do something for them, Yeah, I hope through stuff that I do and other bands that the young listeners will listen to it, and then they'll go look for our influences and find those albums, look at those videos from those classic tours of those classic bands, and just get the feeling of what it was like, because it was an amazing, amazing time. And, hopefully it will stay alive, at least to a certain extent. And like you were saying too, that's the best we can do, is just to try to keep it alive and, take the torch and run with it. Well, so we only have just a few more minutes left for you, but like I wanted to ask you just a couple of lighthearted questions. I like to have some fun with it. Well, first of all, I really enjoy talking to you, man. This is really great. You're awesome.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Very good questions, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Well, like I said, this is kind of a doing the podcast thing is kind of a new thing for me, but I've been enjoying it because I really enjoy the interaction, with the people that I talk to. But like what is one band that we would be like surprised to hear that Mike LePond was a fan of?
Yeah, that's an easy one. Everybody thinks of me as heavy metal guy, progressive metal guy, but a band that I have loved for about 15 years is a band called Blackmore's Night. And now we were talking about Richie Blackmore.
Love them.
Right? The music, what he does on the guitar is so incredible in this band. And I just was blown away by the melodies and everything about the music. So what I would do is I would listen to what Richie does, and I would try to play it on the bass. And
oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
So so in a lot of on my first solo album, there's a lot of folky Celtic kind of medieval parts. And also on Pawn and Prophecy, I have a full-on Celtic song, a full-on folk song. And that really comes from that Blackmore's Night influence.
See, that's really cool to hear, because Blackmore's Night was one of those bands that, like, years ago, I kind of, probably similar to you, like, I was like, oh, Richie Blackmore, I wonder what this is about. And then I'm listening to it, I'm like, wow, this is definitely not Burn, like, or like, or like Child in Time. But this is like, but it was so interesting to hear such a different take on his musicianship,
Yeah, I mean, you could tell that this was something that he's always loved to do, because he was just so good at it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So if you could play bass with any band for just one night live, whether or not they're together anymore or not, who would it be?
That's a good question too. I would say Black Sabbath, I think.
Oh, you know what, though? You could pull it off, because if they put enough smoke in the back, they'd be like, yeah, that's kind of Geezer Butler. Yeah.
Kind of a mustache about a guy, right? Mustache.
Mustache, bass player, must be Geezer, I think, so.
Yeah.
So what is it about Black Sabbath that makes you, that draws you in? Because you've mentioned Sabbath a couple times. Like, what is it about them?
I think, I think that they really invented heavy metal. And as soon as I heard, that first album, their riffs are just so dark and just give you such a heavy metal feeling. I loved all the eras that they had, with Ozzy and with Dio and everybody else, and their bass player Geezer Butler was always one of my favorites. He used to just play. He would play blues, but it would be just so heavy, and it was just like, when I would listen to it when I was younger, I was like, wow, that's so awesome. Just like the riffs he was doing, and he's been great from day one till now. I mean, I just love the way he plays, and Black Sabbath just gives me such a feeling, of wow, like this is like as good as it gets, Well,
what's your favorite Sabbath album?
Man, that's a really good question. I think if I had to pick a favorite, maybe I'd go with Master of Reality.
Yes! Okay. Obviously, you can tell that's mine. I was like,
okay. I struck a chord there.
Because every time someone says Volume 4, I want to hit them and go, wrong, Master of Reality.
Yeah, that's got some really heavy songs on it, man.
I felt like that was where, like, to me, like it kind of became Sabbath, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like, the first album and then Paranoid, they all kind of, it was still early on, but man, by the time they got to Master, that was like, man, that is Sabbath right there,
Yeah, and those songs are dark, and those are some riffs that are just unbelievable. And Ozzy's great on that album too.
Oh, that's, to me, is his best performance with Sabbath was that album. I thought he was just fantastic on that one.
Yeah, just a great record.
And as we're talking about Sabbath, in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, okay, Mike LePond, you need to give Tony Martin and Tony Iommi a call and start a super group, because I've been dying for like a Martin Iommi collaboration again, and I was just like, you would be perfect. So let's get this going.
That's certainly fine with me. I'm not gonna fight you on that one.
I'll make the calls. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. I'll just post it on Facebook probably, and they'll be like, "Who's this jerk?" I'm not gonna, whatever, Right. Well, so Mike, what's in store for the we're really just kind of head into 2018 right now. So what are we looking forward to from you as far as like everything from Silent Assassins to Symphony X to whatever?
Right. So in 2018. Symphony X will begin writing songs for a new album. the Silent Assassins will hopefully pop up doing some festivals or some touring. You know, I'm still looking into some, different offers on that. I'm going to be playing live with Ross the Boss from Manowar. Got dates in the U.S. and Europe planned for that. And a new album from him, too, actually. I forgot to tell you, I played bass on his next solo album. I played on that last month. So, a lot of things, it's going to be another whirlwind year. And, I love it. I love to work, and I'm excited.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. So you're going to be doing that U.S. run with Ross the Boss then, correct?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. There's an Atlanta date here. So I'm going to have to try to see if I can make it out and introduce myself, because I've been dying to see Manowar.
Right.
It sounds bad. Yeah. Done the way it should be, and I'm not ashamed to say that, because, I mean, he's Ross the Boss, you know what I mean? Like, that's just how it is.
Those records are classic. Yeah, that'd be great. Come on out. Yeah, I'd love to meet you, man.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. And is there a website or something that you can plug so that people can stalk you and find out what's going on?
Well, I have a Silent Assassins fan page on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
You can just look for that. If someone has a question, I mean, you can even write to me. I have a personal page on Facebook myself. My manager made me open up a Twitter account, so I guess I got that. Since last night, I have a Twitter now, and I have an Instagram, even though I don't know anything about either one. But
poor guy, man. You're just going to be sitting up in bed with your phone going, I am so overwhelmed.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Well, fantastic. Well, the people will know how to get in touch with you, and good luck with everything you have, with your health and your touring and all that good stuff. And thanks again for being on the show.
Oh, my pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
All righty.